This is John Cressman with monkeyuncle.com, and this is our GameSalad platformer tutorial series. We're on episode 10, and today we'll be covering how to add pickups like coins and also how to give your player an invulnerability mode. Now, if you've been following along with our tutorial series, you should have your project file up to date. If not, you can download the template file from monkeyuncle.com. What you want to download is Platformer Tutorial 009. And once you have it, you also want to make sure you have the Platformer Redux set from kenney.nl. That's kenney.nl. And also his game icon set to do the rest of the tutorial. Today you really only need the platformer set. So with that in mind, first thing you need to do is do a file save as and save this as Platformer Tutorial 10. Now I did say we're going to be making some pickups, so the first thing we want to do is create two actors. Actor 1, we're going to name coin. Actor 2, we're going to name star. Now we're going to create a third actor, and this is going to be a way of keeping track of the coins on the screen. So we're going to call it HUD, much like the HUD lives actor. We're going to call this one though HUD coins, and it's going to keep track of the coins, like I said, on the screen so you can tell what your score or coins are. So now let's go into scenes. We're going to click on game and attributes, and we're going to create two new attributes. The first is going to be a boolean. We're going to call that boolean invulnerable. And the second one is going to be an integer, and we're going to call that coins. Both are fine to stay as they are for now. Now we actually need to give the two new, so let's go back to home and actors. Let's go give these graphics. So click on the coin, open up your platformers set. You want to go to the items, and let's use a silver coin since we're also going to be using a star and it's gold. So drag the silver coin over, change the size to 64 by 64, and then also go into physics and change density, friction, and bounciness to 0, and turn on fixed rotation, and you can turn off movable. Not that you couldn't have a movable coin, but in general, even though they may be animated, they do not actually move. Again, let's file save. Now we're going to add some rules here, and it's actually really only one rule. And we're going to say when the actor, actually let's name this collides with player. So an actor receives, overlaps, or collides with actor of type player. So when this touches a player, then we're going to do two things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to change an attribute, and that attribute is that coins attribute we just created. So we're going to say game.coins is equal to game.coins plus 1. Now if you had, say you had a silver, or say you had a bronze and you made coins plus 1, you could also set the rule on a silver coin to be coins plus 5, and then maybe a gold coin, coins plus 10. So you could actually have different values. We're just incrementing it by 1. Now, once they've touched the coin and we've incremented it, then we don't want to be able to touch this coin again, so we're going to destroy the coin. So drag a destroy behavior in underneath the attribute. You don't want it above because we don't want it to destroy before it adds 1. So this will just increment this coin whenever they touch a coin. Now we actually do not have to do anything to the player because this coin does everything. This coin takes care of adding 1 to the coins and also destroying. Now let's go back home and go to actors. Actually, let's go ahead and save our progress. Now let's go to HUD coins. Now we want to make this invisible much like we did with some of the other lessons, and to do that we don't want it to be invisible when you drag it on the screen. That way we can place it easier. Let's go ahead and actually set this color to something that'll be noticeable. How about this cyan? Alright, so now it's going to be cyan, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change HUD color alpha to 0, and that will make it invisible. Now, interestingly enough, even though we make it invisible, we can still do a display text behavior. Display text simply displays whatever text you put it on the screen. Now, I'm not going to put center. I'm going to make it right justified, or I'm sorry, left justified. Okay, and then I'm going to change this color of the text to yellow, so it's easy to see against our black screen. If you had a different color screen, you might make this different. Now, to make our display our coins, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the E. We're going to type in coins, a colon. Now, to get a space in the expression editor, you have to hold down the Alt key and press space. Okay, that's the Alt or Option key. Then we're going to have in quotes. So that quote, coins, colon, space, quote, that's static text that will always be displayed. And then to add on the coin value, we're going to hit dot dot, and that concatenates 2 different values. And then we're going to add game coins. All right. I'm going to file and save. Now, of course, for that to work, we need to place some coins, and we also need to place our HUD coin so it displays. Now, it won't display anything until it's actually running. So wherever we want it, let's say we want it right here. Now, I'm going to move it down because I don't know if you noticed, but the top part of my screen, because of the resolution, kind of gets cut off. So I'm actually going to move the lives and the coins down a little bit. There we go. That should be enough to display coins. Now you can change the font size, as you can see, and we can go back and play with that another time. But that's where it's going to display the coins. Now remember, it's a HUD element. It's part of the graphical interface. We don't want it to scroll. So let's go to Scene and Layers and just make sure that it's on our HUD layer, which it is. Let's go back to Game, and we're going to grab a coin. We're actually going to grab and drop a couple of coins down here on this platform. I'm going to save this. Now, remember, those coins should not scroll, so let's go back to our layers, Scene and Layers. Notice that they made it to the HUD layer too. We don't want that. We want to put them on the background layer. And hit File, Save. Now we're going to preview it. Notice up here, here's our HUD. It says coins is R0. So now I can have my little guy drop down. He drops down, he touches a coin. Now we have 1 coin, 2 coins, and 3 coins. And I'm dead. So that's working. Now let's take a look at the star actor. Now we want the star to give him invulnerability, but we also, a lot of times when you respawn in the game, you start off invulnerable, because many times you can, once you hit a certain point in a game, and we'll be covering that in a different episode, it actually will have you respawn somewhere in the middle of the game wherever you do what's called a checkpoint. But of course, if you spawn there and there are monsters, that's a bad thing because you die right away, and then if there's a monster still there, well, you just use up all your lives dying right away. So normally they have some type of invulnerability mode, so we're going to try to emulate that. Now the first step is creating the star actor, and all we're going to do is we're going to come back down here and we're going to drag the star graphic. There we go. We can close this down now. And much like the other one, we're going to come down here to density 0, friction 0, bounciness 0, fixed rotation is on, movable is off, and change the size to 64 by 64. And that's really all we need to do with that, except we're going to have one rule, and then we're going to say when it touches or overlaps actor of type player. So again, let's rename this collides with, not with, player. Now we're just going to change an attribute. Actually, I'm sorry, we're not even going to change an attribute. We're just going to destroy ourselves. Okay, so this actor doesn't change anything. All it does is it destroys itself when it touches a player. Because we can't activate the invulnerability mode that we need the way we want within this star. We need to do it within the player. So now we have it so that we just made that rule so it'll disappear when it touches a player. So now we come into player, and we're going to create a couple of assets. Okay, we're going to create one called real, and this real one we called invulnerable timer. Okay, this is going to keep track of how long we're invulnerable. And now we're going to create another one, another real, and we're going to call this invulnerable time. But I'm going to use big case. Now the timer will keep track of the time. This time, actually, you know what, let's not even name it that. Let's say interval. That's going to be how long we stay invulnerable for. And I'm going to change that to 3, which will be 3 seconds. So you can easily change this. All right. Now, when he first starts, we want him to be invulnerable. Now we created that game attribute called invulnerable. Okay. But it's this timer that's really going to control it. So the first thing we do when we spawn is we want to, or one of the first things, so the first thing we're going to do is make sure we're not dead. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to change player invulnerable timer to player time plus, and then we're going to use that invulnerable interval, which, as you know, is 3. So basically we're saying the invulnerable timer is the current time plus 3. And now since we just turned the invulnerable timer on, we want to create another change attribute, and we want to change game invulnerable to true. Okay? Now what that means is that as soon as they spawn, you'll turn on that timer and you'll turn this invulnerable to true. Now because they're invulnerable, we do not want them, we still want them to die when they touch deadly objects, because otherwise, for instance, say you had lava. We don't want them falling into a lava pit, not being able to die, and not be able to get out. So down here where it says enemies, remember we have a deadly objects routine and an enemies routine. We're just going to simply add an additional condition. We're going to say, so when they overlap or collide with an actor with a tag of enemies and attribute game invulnerable is false. So when they're not invulnerable and they collide, then we're going to do this death sequence. Otherwise, it's not going to do anything. Now the other thing we need to do is keep track of that timer. So we're going to come down here. I'm going to create a new rule at the bottom, where we're going to say if attribute player invulnerable timer is less than, meaning that we've exceeded the time. So if it's less than player time, we're going to turn off invulnerable mode. And the way we do that is we're simply going to change attribute game invulnerable, and we're going to change it to false. So basically what we did is we set invulnerable to true using these two attributes at top. We put in a condition so that it tests whether or not they're invulnerable for the enemies, and then we turn it off when the timer's up. Now remember, this is just really kind of the bounding box actor. We want to do something special to let them know that we are in fact invulnerable. Now this is the graphic for the player, and what they usually do is they make the player blink. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if attribute, we'll call this blink when invulnerable. So in attribute game, invulnerable is true, and that's why we had to make it a game attribute, so it was accessible from both the player and the player image actors. So when it's true, we're actually going to use a timer. I'm not a big fan of using timer, but in this case it's going to be the easiest way to do it. So we're going to say every 0.1 seconds, so every 10th of a second, we're going to do something. I'm going to create a new rule, I'm going to drag it up, and we're going to say if attribute player image or self color alpha is equal to 1. So if we're visible, then what we're going to do is we're going to change player image color alpha to 0. So we're going to make ourselves invisible. Otherwise, if we're not equal to 1, then we're equal to 0, in which case we just drag this down using Alt or Option, click and drag. So otherwise we're going to change this to 1. So this rule will run while we're invulnerable, and every 10th of a second it's going to say if we're visible, make us invisible, otherwise make us visible. Now the only other thing we have to do is, what could happen is that you could end this cycle while you're invisible. So we have to say this is what you do when invulnerable is true. When it's false, let's make sure by changing it player image color alpha to 1, meaning he's visible. Now let's file and save this. Now we're just going to test that first part of invulnerable, that which he should start off invulnerable and he should blink for about 3 seconds. So let's go ahead and try that. Oh, there he's blinking. And now he stopped. Now that he stopped, I'm going to run and I'm going to hop over here and I'm going to, die when I touch him. So see, now I'm invulnerable, but it wears off before he comes over. So we're going to hit home. We're going to go to scene. I'm going to hop down here and move these coins a little further over, and I'm going to drag the star right over here, and that way he can turn invulnerable again. Now of course the only thing we didn't do while we were in there, we handled the invulnerability, but we never set up a rule to handle picking up that star. So let's go ahead and do that now and create a new rule. We're going to move it towards the top, not too far at the top, but, and we're going to say pick up star. So when we touch or collide with the star, then we are going to do two things. We're going to change two attributes. So let's drag those over. And those are the same two that we set at the top of the screen. So it's emulating the player starting over again. So the first thing we do is we set that invulnerability timer to self time plus self invulnerable interval, and we set game invulnerable to true. So let's save that. Let's go to our scene, and most likely the star is, oh no, the star is not in the HUD. Oh, good. So let's give it a try. So we're invulnerable. We're not invulnerable. I'm going to click the star. I'm going to quickly run. Oh, see that? I hopped over him, but it ran out and I died. Now I am invulnerable, but it ran out right as I hit him. So as you can see, you can now pick up coins, and you can also use an invulnerability mode, which could be either a pickup or just a nice, clean way to spawn the actor and give them a couple seconds to get out of harm's way. And that's it for, oh, and we died again. And that's it for Platformer Tutorial Episode 10. Please check out our other tutorials. If you haven't done the first 9, I really recommend starting over and doing all 9 so that you have this nice template to work with and build your own games. You can download all these templates and find more at monkeyuncle.com.